Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 45 of the Early Parenting Podcast. Today, I am talking about transitioning through the different textures of foods when introducing solids to your baby. So there is a lot of fear around changing textures, so I'm really excited to bring you this episode today. So let's dive in. Welcome to the Early Parenting Podcast, where we help you navigate the somewhat tricky world of parenthood so you can love the crap out of being a mama. I'm your host, Jen Butler, and I'm an early parenting consultant and a mama of two busy boys. Join me as I explore all things early parenting and deliver them to you in toddler-friendly, bite-sized lessons. Because let's be honest, your toddler is probably smothering pseudo-cream on the wall as we speak. I'll be dropping my hottest tips on baby and toddler sleep, feeding, boobs, behaviour, and so much more. Are you ready to feel confident in motherhood? Let's dive in. This episode's brought to you by the Crying Baby Checklist, my brand new freebie, which takes you through the 6 most common reasons why your new baby will be crying. If you want to get an understanding of the most common reasons for why your baby's crying, what's going on with their development and why that crying's happening, and how to calm your crying baby, then make sure to download this freebie. You can download this freebie at jenbutler.mykajabi, which is kajabi.com/crying-baby-checklist. Make sure to grab your copy today. All right, on to the episode. Okay, so the idea of building up texture in your baby's food is to get to a point where you're serving whatever your family is having for dinner. So if this is spag bowl, that means your baby will eventually have spag bowl in exactly the same way you and your partner eat it. That is in the mince form with the noodles and everything. So this is called family foods when we're doing this, when they're eating what the family is eating. And it's the end game when it comes to introducing solids. To get here, it requires a combination of you gradually introducing new foods, new tastes, new experiences to their diet, plus increasing the food texture of what they're eating, which is what we're diving into today. So first up, let's talk about the phases of textures recommended when introducing solids. Usually we start with a stage of puree where the foods we offer our baby are processed down so they have no lumps or bumps. Usually we do it in a food processor or something similar. So for babies who start solids before 6 months of age, this can be a great introduction to textures because they are quite young and it can just be a really gentle way to introduce foods into their diet. When I talk to families about introducing solids, I often say to skip this stage and jump straight into finely fork mashed foods. So this texture is just like puree, however the food isn't processed quite as much, which means that from the get-go, your baby is getting exposed to a level of texture, which I find then it makes it easier for babies to accept texture changes as time goes on. Building up texture should be done often so your baby doesn't get too used to the one texture. So if you're finely fork mashing food, what you could do is ease off how much you mash your baby's food each week. And in doing so, you're ultimately gradually building up your baby's tolerance to new textures. Often one of the biggest things holding parents back from increasing texture is their own fear of choking. I talk to so many parents and they'll tell me their child choked when they tried something lumpy. And after diving deeper, I usually find out that their baby gagged as opposed to choke. Now, gagging is very, very different to choking, and it's a very normal reflex a baby has. And often they will have some sort of gag if they experience a texture that they're not used to. So the gag reflex is actually a protective mechanism. It means their reflex is reacting and propelling food away from the digestive tract, which in fact prevents choking. So it's a great thing for babies to have a gag reflex. The thing is that some babies have a really strong gag reflex and are more sensitive to texture changes than others. But the worst thing you can do is, if your baby is gagging, is to regress in offering an increase in textured foods. Because in order for your baby to become used to the texture, they need repeated experience with that level of texture for them to accept it and for it not to stimulate the gag reflex. So even if your baby is gagging, I urge you to persevere with whatever texture you're at, because once they're used to it, the gagging will improve. Now, this leads me to talking about finger foods. After we build up the texture of finally fork mashing and then fork mashing a little bit less, we're generally building up to your baby eating finger foods. Now, parents are usually petrified of this phase because it means your baby is dealing with big chunks of food. Now, I did an episode on baby-led weaning and introducing finger foods in episode 15, so I highly recommend you go back and listen to that. But in the episode, I talk about how I'm a big fan of a hybrid approach to introducing solids, where from the minute your baby starts solids, you also offer finger foods. Usually this sees your baby just playing with the food at the start. But remember, this is all a part of the learning experience. If your baby can feel food with their hands and notice the texture, when they go to put that to their mouth, the texture isn't such a shock. Again, if you've got a super gaggy baby, I highly recommend you try offering them finger foods, which probably is going to scare the crap out of you. But if your baby can actually feel that texture before it's even put to their mouth, then hopefully that's going to help them to accept that the food is going to be lumpy and it's going to be less likely to stimulate that gag reflex. Anyway, I hope you found this episode useful. I'll be joining you here again next week for another episode of the Early Parenting Podcast, so I'll see you then. Thanks for listening to the episode, Mama. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to share the episode with a friend, with your mother's group, or tag me at Jen Butler Early Parenting on Instagram. The more that know about this podcast, the more people I can help. If you're looking for support that is personalised for your babe and tailored to your family's needs, then make sure to head on over to my website, www.jenniferbutler.com.au, and check out how we can work together so you can move through motherhood with confidence. Catch you in the next episode, Mama.